all set, so. All right, so I'm gonna welcome everybody to the Conservation Commission July 7th special meeting, 2020-24, and would somebody like to make a motion to close the non-public session of this meeting?
I will make a motion to close the non-public part of this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
And second by Alice. And any discussion? And all those in favor? Okay. And then would somebody like to make a motion to seal the minutes from the non-public session?
Make a motion to seal the minutes from the.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion? And all those in favor?
Excuse me, could you guys turn your mics on or speak louder?
We could get a little closer. Yeah, they're on, I think.
Okay. So I don't have an actual agenda.
It's a presentation. I think you could
Yeah,
probably
okay.
invite
So should we try to,
Dwayne, or
should we go ahead with that?
Yeah.
you come up, yeah.
All right. Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Dwayne Hyde. I'm the Land Conservation Director for the Southeast Land Trust. And with me is Brian Hart. Brian's the Executive Director from Southeast Land Trust. And I put together a PowerPoint presentation that pretty much mimics the memo, and I know a number of you were, did everyone go on the site walk or no? Okay, I didn't think I remember Lynn being there, so it's probably a good opportunity. It may be a little bit repetitive, and I apologize for that, but I think it's good for everyone to kind of hear the resource values of what we're referring to as Portsmouth 100-acre wood, the Cavaretta project. And so, whoops, I think there we go, hit the big arrow. So the Cavaretta property is located off of Elwyn Road, across from the Urban Forestry Center. The Urban Forestry Center, it's about 182 acres and owned by the DRED, formerly DRED. And then it abuts about 215 acres of other conservation land in Rye. That includes the Rye Elementary School. And then also abuts open space associated with it, Woodside? Woodlands development. So this is an aerial photo of the property. The property was formerly, way back, a dairy farm. And those of you that went on the site walk, we saw what we think were maybe some old watering holes that were used for the dairy farm. It then transitioned to a bird farm, sold turkeys at one time, and then moved to a more of a game bird farm for Portsmouth restaurants. So guinea hens, partridge, and the like were raised on the property and sold for the restaurants. It now is the largest unconserved, undeveloped private property in all of Portsmouth, being just under 100 acres. So the property owner has long been interested in conservation, but has also received a lot of inquiries from developers over time, but has been, given the family's history of the land, the Cavarettas had a general store over where Atlantic Grill is now on the at the traffic circle, have long been members of the community, and really wanted to keep the land if they could rather than developing it. So that's where conservation easement was an opportunity to do that. Rather than going the route, some conceptual development planning has been done previously on this property, one plan showing about 37 condominium units potentially on this property. And that's just using the existing frontage. Nowadays, people are getting very creative. I've seen it firsthand on some projects where developers acquire house lots and neighboring developments and use those, demo those houses and put in access in order to increase their density. So that could be an outcome for this property if we're not successful. I've been involved in conversations with Mr. Cavaretta for 12 years to get to where we are today. But the conversations have been going on long before that. I've heard as long as 20 years in the making of interest in this property. And where we are today is CELT has secured a purchase and sale agreement with Mr. Cavaretta to acquire a conservation easement on 94 acres, approximately, of the property, which is that area outlined in red on the aerial photo. And it excludes an area where his house is located. That's that white hatched area that's about 5 acres in size. And the property, for those of you that went on the site walk, has a long driveway. That's that yellow dotted line to access. So a little bit on the background on the property and its resource values and why we're here to talk about the conservation of this important property. First and foremost, starting off with the Portsmouth's open space plan that was adopted in 2020, which at the outset talks about working in partnership with groups like Southeast Land Trust and the Forest Society to conserve land. And what's really interesting is in that plan, the Cavaretta property is actually specifically identified as a priority. The priorities of conserving this property in the open space plan talk about basically the green infrastructure benefits this property provides for the city, the water flood storage capacity, the treatment capacity of the property, the carbon sequestration and the like, which these are all directly from the city's open space plan. So really talking about the important resource values that this property provides. But stretching out beyond the city, this property is not only important from a city perspective, but also at a regional scale. There was a conservation plan done for the Great Bay and coastal region called what we call the Coastal Conservation Plan, Coastal Watershed Conservation Plan. And it identified focus areas within the Great Bay and Seacoast region of regional significance. And this property is largely, almost entirely, 93% located within one of those focus areas. Furthermore, there was another study done looking at regionally significant wildlife connectivity corridors and wildlife priority areas for wildlife habitat. And once again, looking at a much bigger scale than just the city scale. And this property is also located not only in one of those priority areas, but also includes a important wildlife connectivity corridor, about 1.4 acres toward the Urban Forestry Center. Now stepping back even further at a larger scale, so important at a city scale, important at a regional scale, now we're talking about at a statewide scale. The State Wildlife Action Plan, which looks at the habitats of the entire state, has about 63% of this property identified as being important for wildlife habitat values. So the purple area is highest ranked habitat in all of New Hampshire. So when looking at those habitat values for the entire state, the green is highest in the biological region. Then there are other plans. The Nature Conservancy has done a lot of work in climate resilience, and what's really fascinating, usually that I see more resilient properties having hills or mountains associated with them, a lot of topographic diversity, but this property scored pretty well from a climate resilience scale, with 81% of the property being average or better for climate resilience. And when I dug into that data, it appears it's due to the soil types are also a driver for its resilience. So that was interesting. And then way back in 1993, when the Barry's Brook River Water Management Plan was done, it too mentioned this specific property as if it were developed at a priority for conservation, because the development of this property could adversely impact the water quality of Barry's Brook. So speaking of those water quality and water features, we have done some preliminary, not detailed, we have some more detailed work underway, but a staff member went out this spring just to do a quick check and found 3 active vernal pools on the property with egg masses. The city's own prime wetlands ordinance, about 44.5 acres, is part of a larger 220-acre prime wetland that the city identified. And the property includes about 1,725 feet of a perennial tributary to Barry's Brook, as you see cutting across the property. Then some regional planning efforts have been done looking at important areas from a regional perspective that are for flood risk mitigation and pollutant attenuation. Those areas that are holding water and treating that water naturally and then releasing it slowly, both from improving water quality and also protecting downstream resources. About 60 acres of this property falls within those categories. Then finally, another really important potential resource that we can be thinking about longer term on this property, or possibly even shorter term, is it's really got amazing context with respect to 2 elementary schools. You have the Rye Elementary School abutting this property, who has an active outdoor education program, curriculum, and also the Dondero School for the city of Portsmouth is located close by and also has an active curriculum and outdoor education and resource education, providing potentially an opportunity for outdoor classroom use for students. So as I said, Southeast Land Trust, after many tiresome years, does have this property under agreement with a purchase price of $1.8 million for a conservation easement. Very generously, the landowner is giving a $345,000 bargain sale. So in other words, they're selling this conservation easement for under its fair market value. And it is a conservation easement, so the land will be retained by the landowner, but subject to the restrictions held by the conservation easement. The way structured currently is the Southeast Land Trust would hold the conservation easement and be responsible for its enforcement and monitoring of that conservation easement. That is a very often, unlike when you buy real estate where you're getting an asset, a conservation easement is not, it's an obligation, not an asset. It is a guarantee you are making to the public and the IRS and the Charitable Trust Division, in our case, that we are going to monitor and enforce that easement in perpetuity. Thus the costs associated with doing that are borne by the easement holder. CELT is an accredited land trust by the Land Trust Accreditation Commission. We were accredited in 2013 and have gone through 3 reaccreditations with the Land Trust Alliance. That's no small undertaking. That means that we have gone through and created the policies and procedures in place for holding conservation easements and monitoring conservation easements. We're setting aside adequate funds to do so. We have professional staff who monitor the conservation easements and prepare the necessary reports that meet the accreditation requirements. We have policies and procedures with regard to how we do our monitoring and how we do our enforcement. So it is a significant undertaking for an entity or an organization to take on easement holding and easement monitoring. What we would propose in the easement is there's many different ways, but often one of the tools we typically use when working in partnership with a community is that the community would have a third-party right of enforcement in the conservation easement. I kind of refer to that as the Cadillac of luxury, in that the city has all the ability to enforce and monitor the conservation easement without the costs associated with it. So it's a cost savings for the city, but also an important that the city can undertake the enforcement and monitoring, but it doesn't have to. It can rely upon the Southeast Land Trust. It's only if the city feels it's necessary to do monitoring and enforcement. And on top of that, the terms that are written with LCHIP, one of the funding sources, if the city finds a violation of the easement and notifies SELT and we fail to take any action on that violation, the city can then enforce the easement, and SELT is responsible for paying the costs for that enforcement. So that is thus the savings for the city. Now, if it goes to court and the city is found, the violation is found to not be a violation by a court of law, we are not obligated to pay those costs. But if there is a violation and it goes to court and the city is enforcing it, we are responsible. On top of this, all of this, we negotiated with Mr. Cavaretta because our desire and hope is that someday this could become a public space for that SELT would own and manage. We have a right of first offer and refusal written into the purchase agreement for Southeast Land Trust to be able to acquire the property should the landowner ever decide that they wish to sell the property to somebody outside of the family. We have a closing date of a desired closing date, basically of June of 2025, but no later than December 2025. So the conservation easement terms themselves were summarized in the memo. I'll highlight a few of them here that are also up on the screen. The easement has many of the typical provisions, not allowing subdivision of the property, not allowing mining, obviously, excavation of the property, prohibits structures other than those that are used for basically the management of the property, agricultural and forestry related, prohibits motorized vehicles, so recreational ATV use and the like. Would be prohibited other than management vehicles that are used for the management of the property. Prohibits the burial of man-made materials, so dumps and the like are prohibited. Eliminates the easement area from being used for any type of density calculation, frontage requirement for other developed land, because we're basically stripping away those development rights. Obviously, we have a driveway going through the property, so the easement area, so that easement would have a provision that allows for the maintenance and use of that driveway. The easement further has a provision that we use LCHIP standard provision about public access, requires that the land not be posted against public access and hunting. So it gives the opportunity for dispersed recreational use of the property. I think some of the neighbors do go out there and enjoy the property, and folks will continue to be able to do that under the terms of this easement. The easement also allows for the continuation of agricultural and forestry practices on the property. I know the city doesn't have a lot of large undeveloped and forest land tracts. We work in a lot of communities where that is the case, and it's very common practice. And our standard easement provision does require that any commercial forest management that is done be done in accordance with a written forest management plan prepared by a licensed professional forester. Foresters in New Hampshire are licensed. We're not talking about loggers, we're talking about a forester, somebody who's got the credentials and the education to understand the resource values of the property. The forestry has to be done in accordance with to protect the resource values that are identified in the conservation easement. and follow best management practices, so things like buffers to wetlands and stream systems. So it's a very careful forestry that is done, and any type of forest management has to be overseen on the ground by the forester. So fairly high level. Getting to the budget, the budget was included in your memo. Total project cost is $2,226,600. That it does include the landowner's bargain sale amount of $345,000. We have submitted an application to LCHIP for funding at $350,000. CELT is proposing to launch a pretty significant private fundraising campaign for the property to raise $561,600, which we have a good, strong donor base here in Portsmouth, but that is still a big number to fundraise for. But we feel fairly reasonably confident we're going to be able to hit that number. But our request here to the Conservation Commission is a request to fund about 44% of the project with a request of $1 million. It's one thing that will be really important to secure that LCHIP funding is to show a support from the city toward this project, and hopefully financial support to the project. So that's all I have as far as a presentation. I'm happy to answer questions, or if Brian, if I didn't hit on anything that you'd like to highlight.
No, I mean, I thank you everybody for giving us opportunity to present the project and for doing the site walk. And I think, you know, there's rare opportunities in Portsmouth, as you all are more aware of than I am as residents, and you've seen the development that's happening within the core and outside the core of the downtown. And, you know, we've worked for 12 years because we know of the limited opportunities to protect critical lands. And one of the things I've observed in the last 20 years working for CELT is sometimes there's a confusion of what conservation is, and it's not all about access to conservation lands. That's one of the benefits. And, you know, this property is really, right now, the way we're able to structure the agreement with Mr. Cavaretta is focused on the green infrastructure benefits that your open space plan so well identified. And I think that should be the focus of what we're talking about. Hopefully at some point in the future, there will be a chance to acquire the full property, but that would be the chance to then provide the other benefits in a way that would most satisfy us as well as other people. But that's not on the table right now because Mr. Cavaretta is living on the property, and you can imagine that the activity of use, the heavy use that like the Urban Forestry Center gets happening on his property would be inconsistent with any of our desires for living on a property. So, you know, we're excited to have this chance and hope that the commission will be favorable to this recommendation to the city council so we can move forward with proceeding with the project and hopefully getting LCHIP behind it and raising the remaining funds.
Thank you. Are you guys good for questions at this point?
Oh,
then
sure.
From the
Sure.
commissioners
We love
and everybody?
questions.
Yeah. I just had one to clarify. You said what you needed to get out of this. It's basically the support for the LCHIP grant, and we just wanted to, and the support for the funding, but can we separate those two tonight?
I think you can tonight. We do. It will be important for LCHIP for us to be able to show that this is a feasible project. I think if we have to stagger those two things a little bit, it can work. But we are looking at probably end of August kind of time frame. Maybe we could get into September. I know Brian's going to kick me on that. But where a funding commitment before LCHIP makes its decision, they're going to want to know that we have a solid financial plan for the project. Yeah.
That answers the question. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, other questions from the commissioners? And I think we have one on a call, right?
Oh.
Yeah, we do have Jessica Blasco, one of our conservation commissioners, on the phone. I don't know if
Okay.
she has anything to say, but she can chime in. She's on speaker.
And our chair is supposed to be here any minute. So, but Do you guys have some questions?
Some basic questions, just because I wasn't on the site walk. It looks like there's a large area that's mowed or cultivated, and I'm just curious to know just like a little bit more about how the land is used currently, and then what you know about the landowner's kind of interest in using the land, just to kind of get into their head, right? Because it's kind of a collaboration now, right?
Sure,
That you're
yeah.
putting on the table.
Yeah, Joe is a stonemason.
And he's not here.
He's not
Can I
here.
just-
No,
okay,
Joe's
just wanted
not
to
here.
clarify.
Yeah, no, it's
Thank
fine.
you.
He was on the site walk with
Okay.
the commission. So Joe's a stonemason and is, that's a hard career to have your whole life, and so is slowing down career-wise. And I think his work has kept him from doing a lot of things on the property. So I'm getting to your point. The field, which was largely a field at one time, had that game bird raising, got overgrown pretty significantly. A lot of buckthorn, unfortunately. But he has gone in and mowed that back a little bit. It looked like last year he had hit some of it with a mowing equipment. I think he does want to try to get that field back. But whether he does or not, I can't tell you. He has expressed some desire to get the field reestablished. And currently he cuts just firewood on the property, mostly down trees. He typically has been taking from a firewood perspective for heating his own home. And he's met with county foresters a long time ago who were making some recommendations about some timber stand improvement work out there, but he hasn't done anything, and he may in the future if in accordance with the easement, but he doesn't have any immediate plans on doing anything.
So the mowed
answer?
area.
Yep.
So in terms of that like mowed area, with the new arrangement, that would fall. He would still be allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And you would kind of provide a little bit of kind of stewardship guidance.
Guidance, yeah,
Kinda how that
particularly
works?
with the invasives. I think he's going to need a little bit of guidance and connect him with folks like the Natural Resources Conservation Service to help in that.
Okay. And is that a priority, kind of keeping it open? Is that part of the ecological value? Just curious.
Well, it definitely, maybe having it in a shrubland habitat isn't necessarily a bad thing too. So if he were interested in getting that, I think we would work with him on keeping it in a shrubland cover too. Yeah.
Okay.
The conservation easement gives him the flexibility to decide. He can let it grow back to forest. He can
Yep.
keep it as a hayfield, as a shrubby. So that's kind of up to him and the overall management plan he develops.
It's nice to have some of that diversity on the property
Yeah.
though, from a habitat perspective. Yeah.
Or farm it, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
could put it into corn or whatever.
Yeah.
if you
That's
wanted,
pretty unlikely.
given the soils probably, but.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And this is, again, I'm just thinking about like the different uses and what could happen there. And this is just, I should probably know this, but I mean, I'm assuming that anything that is wetland there's no chance of logging that, right? That would be not allowed, and it would come to us, I guess, is to get it.
I think it would go to the Southeast Land Trust the
Yeah.
way that
Yeah.
I understand it.
Yeah,
Okay.
people file intent to cuts with the city, obviously, for that type of thing. I don't know if the city has any
Well, we-
regulations, but,
If
but
they were gonna cut in wetlands, they wouldn't be allowed based on our wetland ordinance.
Yeah.
But the easement wouldn't allow it unless the forest management plan said, that's what I thought you were getting at. The forestry management plan, these guys, the
Yeah.
Southeast Land Trust
Yeah.
gets to oversee.
generally the best management practices recommend buffers to wetland systems, but there can be biological reasons to create openings in some wetland systems, or habitat purposes. So never is always a hard thing. So if there's a good reason, and we don't have them like we used to, but sometimes harvests are done in the winter when the ground is frozen and snow covered in order to do treatments for wildlife habitat purposes. We've done that ourselves on some of our own lands for once again for habitat or other reasons. But by and large, buffers to wetlands and streams.
And then staying out of the actual wetland
Yeah,
itself.
yeah.
And it sounds like there's a city ordinance that would be at play too.
The
so-
city ordinance would still apply.
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
So I guess I have a question along those lines. If CELT is the holder of the easement and is kind of doing most of the monitoring of what's happening on the land, how do you interface with the city? Like, how would we know kind of the same information other than us sending our people out? Is there would you have some kind of relationship with us to?
So what we do sometimes, and we could easily do in this instance, is provide the city with copies of our monitoring reports so that you're aware. And the monitoring reports include a discussion with the landowner as far as past management and proposed management. So keep the city as informed as we are through getting copies of those reports.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a whole system as far as how the reports and a database system for entering those reports and tracking them.
Yeah, I don't know about how others feel, but just the size and the significance of the investment, it just seems like something if the arrangement were to stay kind of that CELT is kind of overseeing all that we would want that somehow. And so how would you work that into whatever our agreement is with you?
Well, I mean, the routine approach for projects where there is third-party interest, whether it's LCHIP, they require the submission of the report on an annual basis. So the stewardship department staff have routinely submitted those reports to all the partners that require them, or either through the agreements or through the easements. And so it's standard practice to share the reports. Not a concern at all.
Yeah, and there's agreements that we have in place, basically with like, for instance, LCHIP for their funding, and we would do some type of agreement with the city for its funding, and it could include a provision about providing monitoring reports, and that survives closing.
So that hasn't been drafted yet?
No.
There's no draft agreement with the city?
No. That's a
When would
it's a little
that-
premature.
When would that?
I could
December.
I could probably draft one up relatively quickly. Yeah, I've done a lot of them.
Since we're considering a significant chunk of the funds, or considered as potential funders for a significant chunk, is there a reason, whether it's historical or personal, about why the role of the city of Portsmouth here is so limited?
Well, so the elephant in the room is we're aware of the concerns that have been expressed to you by the city's attorney, and I think it's accurate and fair to say that those are an opinion, not based on any inconsistency with state law. And so Portsmouth is the only community that we work with that has taken the opposite position of the other communities, which is that the city has preferred historically to be the primary holder of easements. So we have a really good, strong working relationship with the city, especially around the Bellamy Reservoir, where we have been negotiating the projects, helping to get to a contract. The city is providing funding. We might help apply for funding, but the city is the easement holder. There's no other community that we work with in the 52 towns that we serve that prefers that. And so, you know, our perspective is our one purpose as an organization is land conservation and stewardship. And the city has hundreds of purposes and services that it needs to provide. And so as our one purpose and focus, we have the expertise, experience, knowledge. Over the last 25 years, I've been with the organization 22. The organization's been holding easements since 1990, I think it was. And that experience translates to the ability to address. These are complex legal documents, and I know your attorney would agree with that. And there's nuances and challenges that come up. And so for us, it's like a gift to the city to say we're willing to take that responsibility and remove it from something that the city attorney has to either hire out or learn about or relearn about when it's a new staff person, versus the organization has the inherent knowledge, policies in place, as Dwayne was saying, procedures, staff, and capacity to take it on. You know, it's a liability. Every single easement we get has an ongoing cost and a catastrophic risk of a dispute that takes hundreds of hours of time and tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars to resolve. One of the benefits for us that is for you too is the organization. We are members of Terra Firma Conservation Defense, which is a risk pool established by the land trust community that allows coverage for legal disputes on conservation easements or lands. And it costs us about $20,000 a year, and the coverage is up to several $100,000 per dispute and $5,000 deductible. And I'll tell you, it's worth it. And that's not available to government agencies and communities. Now, the city has legal expertise, which we have to hire out. But we have that kind of routine experience to do it. So almost every other community we work with, Dwayne's going to have to leave to go to Newmarket, and they're being asked for a substantial contribution towards their project, and they're going to have this type of arrangement in the legal interest. And they're like, thank you. We want to achieve the outcome, but we don't want to have the annual responsibility. I realize that the city might choose differently, but from our perspective, it's kind of inconsistent with the experience we've had, and I would question whether it's the best choice for the reasons I explained.
Yeah, and I would even argue that I don't see the city as having a limited responsibility or role in this project. That as I tried to reiterate is the third party right of enforcement is a significant interest in this conservation easement. You get everything, all the rights of the easement holder with respect to enforcing the easement without the financial obligations of doing that, which to me is both smart from a taxpayer point of view and cost point of view, but also with respect to your ability to ensure that the funds that were put toward this project are protecting the resource that it's intended to protect.
Thank you. That helps me understand why it was done that way. Yeah. Then I have a more administrative question. I'm not sure I understand the budget. There's the easement bargain sale, so the owner is not or is selling for 345,000 less.
Yeah.
How come that's in the budget? So that's why I'm.
Because it's a real cost that could have been incurred on this project. The fair market value is that I can't do the math that quickly in my head. That that number.
2.145.
Yeah, Ryan's like a savant and that kind of thing. So
Just with numbers, apparently.
so he. So that it's recognizing that this project could have cost that much, but the landowner is making that donation of value.
And in this case, we would assume he will pursue the charitable tax deduction, which means, so it's a true gift in our mind when a landowner is selling for that much less.
Yeah. And that gift amount can be used for leverage, like the LCHIP grant. We can show that as they too. That's how they like to see their budgets shown. Is like that there is the gift as part of the project, or the total cost of the fair market. A total appraised fair market value is the total cost of the project.
So they would base the amount of their grant on the total value, on the real fair market value.
Yep.
That's what I think.
They would see themselves leveraging if they gave $356 of value for every dollar they gave.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I have a question on the right of first refusal part of it. There's concern about having any control at that point too, and I don't know how much flexibility there is with that as far as your relationship with the city or any kind of agreements on that, where it comes up for sale, you guys do end up buying it, and then what happens next? You make it open to the public, maybe have trails that the public can access. And so what other things do you want to do with that, or do you think would happen? Because it could be pretty far off too, right? Time-wise.
Yeah, I mean, it could be pretty far off. So the, from the start, as I said before, there's limited opportunities for conservation projects in Portsmouth and a lot of the seacoast because of the pressure development, evaluation, et cetera. And so when we look to the future of our organization, we want to be able to have opportunities to showcase the benefits of land conservation, what you can do with land, and to engage people. And because eventually there will not be projects to pursue and protect. So we've always wanted the opportunity to own this property, and that's because of those benefits. The trail is kind of a relatively easy one if there was going to be a trail system, if it was owned by us. But in addition to that, with the area that is not subject to the restrictions around his house, that offers an opportunity to do programming, create a space that could provide benefits. We have no plans, no ideas about that because it's premature to get to that level of excitement or planning. But seeing that where it's located, its proximity to the Urban Forestry Center and the schools, there's a lot of opportunity there. Now, our organization has developed over the last 3 years a nature-based education program based at our campus headquarters in Epping. That can't serve the whole area. So here we'd have a place that could provide a satellite opportunity to do nature-based programming in partnership with the community. So that's about as far in our thinking as we've gone.
Yeah, and one thing, more of a mechanics item, but may be of interest to you. Let's just say CELT is able to acquire the property someday through that right of first offer and refusal. Ideally, and when we've been able to acquire lands that are subject to our conservation easements, it's nice to have another partner involved. So what we'd probably propose, if the city were so willing at that time, is to have the city hold the easement on us, because it's best to have another party hold the easement on each other. And since we're partners in the easement, you've been involved in it, it's best to have the easement separated from our ownership. It's not impossible. There's no law that prohibits it, but it's a nice way to partner with the community.
At our headquarters, when we acquired the easement was bought and then the land was bought, and we transferred the easement. We assigned it to the Forest Society for that same reason. So that's a.
But we could also, we could do the Forest Society in this instance, if the city wasn't interested, we could approach them.
And since it may be different people involved in this from CELT's end and the city's end, is there a way to express that in the agreement? Your interest in that? Or potential,
the idea is-
scenarios maybe, if this, then that kind of thing? Or
it's like sort of like a right of first refusal of the easement. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
you have right of first refusal to buy it, and then
you all, like you're our first in line as far as the
either like
easement.
the easement holder. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't see why that couldn't be addressed
Yeah.
in a project agreement or even through the conservation easement. You could probably write, should the grantee become the grantor, the owner of the land, sorry.
Yeah.
The interest in the easement shall have to be conveyed out.
And this, first option is the city of Portsmouth, if it wanted that.
That way it's a choice, because future leadership might be like, no, thank you, we had that lawsuit on the other one, we're done.
Yeah.
Or not. It's up to you.
Thank you.
it was super fun to hear you just talk about your ideas for the property. And I think what I got from that was that like you are genuinely excited about
Oh, yeah.
taking ownership of this property. And I wasn't quite sure if that was the case or if the landowner was like,
Port
really want.
Dwayne has been harassed by me
Okay.
to get to the landowner
Oh,
to get
that's
to
good.
yes.
Okay,
But that
great.
didn't happen.
Yeah, we just haven't been able to get there. You know.
There's,
For the purchase, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was that's what we came out of it. Well, believe me, we've run so many different scenarios and tried to negotiate so many different scenarios to get to ownership, but haven't been successful.
Okay. And the landowner doesn't have any issues with Portsmouth being part of the equation here, being a collaborator on this, the way we're talking.
Oh, they
right
know
now.
we're here tonight.
Okay, so
and
just
I've been out
thought
there.
I'd ask that too.
Yeah. We're yep.
Yeah.
They knew we were coming for funding and presenting the project. So yep.
Okay. And then one other related question about some of those future uses. I'm just thinking about the public access piece. So right now I hear that the Mr. Cavaretti, I'm saying it's wrong.
Cavaretta.
Cavaretta, thank you. doesn't want additional trails. Is that written into the easement that there wouldn't be any additional trails?
No.
Okay, so you won't
no.
need to change the easement in order
No,
to.
actually, we need to be careful with the easement to
Yeah.
make sure we allow for, and I've explained this to Mr. Cavaretta, like, I know you don't want a parking area or anything like that, but we need to have flexibility in the design of the easement to allow for, like, a parking area for a trailhead, that if so when we own it, we can't violate the easement.
Right.
We need to make sure we build flexibility in the easement to allow for the uses that we would envision for the property.
Okay,
So.
so the easement will be written for that future use as well as the current use.
Right.
And what's stopping you from putting in a trail I guess,
He doesn't want one.
and.
But if he
and
changes
and
his
he's the
mind-
landowner, so like he still
Yeah.
gets, okay.
If
just
he
clarifying.
changed his mind, if he said, I've lived with this and I'm really happy, and and he lets people on his property, he's fine with that. He just is a little worried about like it becoming an urban forestry center too, and losing some privacy there. So, he could change his mind and say, I've thought about it and I really would like to have a little trail connecting here, and the easement wouldn't prohibit that. It would. We could say, great, work with them on location.
Okay.
Work with you all.
Because part of it, we'll have to kind of explain the public benefit, right, of this big investment, and so it's just helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions or anything from anyone? We are a little stuck because, I feel like there's a fair amount of support here, and but we also are making just a recommendation in a way when it comes to the funding. So we want to kind of make sure all ducks are in a row and that the city supports it at some level, or some of the concerns are addressed. So that's where we.
I think there's some members of the public who might want to have a chance to provide their input to you, if you're open to that, which is what we understood from discussions with staff. But I think that understanding from my own experience being on the town council in another town, like you all have, I would encourage you to consider whether this is worth the investment and let the details about the concerns be worked on over the next few weeks, because we heard about them this morning. They can't get resolved quickly. Some of them might disappear after further conversation or understanding. But it keeps the process going, because without your vote of a recommendation of whatever you might decide, it can't go to the city council, can't get on a calendar. And we all know how the summer is and how meeting agendas and stuff. We just want have that momentum to keep doing the work. So that would be, because you're recommending the commitment of funding, the city council working with staff has to decide what the legal structure is and the legal interest in the real estate that they would be accepting, because you don't have that authority. That's my understanding. So that would be our request.
Thank you. So there's members from the public that want to speak. We have a few more minutes, I think. Are we till 6?
Yeah, we have till 6 or 6:15.
Yeah, 6:15 at the latest, but hopefully 6, because I think some tables need to get rearranged.
Okay, you said 6:15 at the latest, though, if we have to do a vote? Okay. Do we want to do the podium?
Hi, Jane. Yeah, if
Yeah,
the mic,
just-
we can all hear you. Either way, you can sit there if you want over here. Just sit by a microphone. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Just,
I know you've got some time limits. I just wanted to make sure. I'm Jameson French, and I've been in Portsmouth for 46 years. I live in Driftwood Lane, and I've been involved in a lot of things in the town, particularly around this type of thing, and a few other projects that you may be aware of. I was appointed by Mayor Sorrell back years ago to be the chair of the Blue Ribbon Commission that did the Great Bog Project. I was board chair of the Society of Protection of New Hampshire Forests and negotiated a lot of the deal around the saving of Creek Farm and the land around that. And I happened to be the local guy who was the chairman of the Land Trust Alliance, which was referred to in these guys' excellent presentation, which is the national organization that has about 850 land trusts across the country and is the spin-offer of the Terra Firma Insurance that was actually done under my when I was incoming chair. and also the Accreditation Commission, which was referred to, which SELT is part of. So I just want to enthusiastically endorse the city's support, or this commission's support of this project with the proposed structure, and really urge you guys to step up and recommend the requested funding to the council. I want to give you a little bit of background. These guys did a great job about what accreditation means, and it really means that this organization is held to the highest standards of the land trust community in both practices and standards. And for me, when I was chairman of this national organization, I think I'm the only guy from New Hampshire that's ever chaired it, that my local land trust was an outstanding member and what we call an exemplary land trust, and that they were accredited in 2023, and now they're accredited through 2029. It's actually really a big deal. You have to have financial governance. If you look at the Accreditation Commission, you'll see the standards to which it's held. It's a national standard that's pretty impressive and has been copied around the world by other countries like Australia that have worked toward starting land trust communities. So I use the word, and I was very proud to say my local land trust is SELT, and it is an exemplary land trust led by an exceptional leadership team. So I really think it's important for Portsmouth to know that this partnership with SELT, that they are a trusted, valued, and professional partner with the capacity and the expertise and the staff to monitor and enforce these easement terms. And these guys did a great job presenting that. I think that this means that Portsmouth does gain this experience in a very complicated piece of property and a complicated transaction. They held 250 of these easements across Rockingham and Stratford County, which is pretty significant. I think we should really celebrate the fact that SELT is wanting to work as closely as they are with our city, and it would be really a mistake, and I'm sort of shocked by the city attorney's involvement at this point in time, to change the structure of this very complex transaction. And honestly, I don't think the city has the resources at the moment and the staff with the experience to do this kind of monitoring of an easement. No offense, but I think that I don't know of anybody that's got that skills. And you've heard all about the enforcement, and you've been very clear about that. I think the other thing that these guys have been modest about is that not only is this the last major unprotected piece of property in the community, and I'm aware of conversations when we were working on Creek Farm, this property came into conversations. That's over 25 years ago. This was on our radar screen. And there's some other people here who were involved in the early days of the Seacoast Land Trust, which merged into SELT. Robin Najar and Peter Vandermark and Peter Berg were all involved in that, as I was, and we all got together originally trying to stop the development of Belle Isle, which is another story. But I think that you can't underestimate that we would never even be here in this conversation if it wasn't for the dogged determination of these two characters and the relationship that they developed with a very cantankerous landowner, which you can't underestimate. I don't think there's anybody in the city that could possibly have handled that negotiations and gotten this landowner to the place that he's at. So to throw a spanner into this at the last minute with the schedule that's on the docket and the importance of getting this done before the end of August is really a case of Monday morning quarterbacking. And I'm a little bit upset about the fact that the city attorney came in at this point in time. I don't know if he's here, but to even begin to talk about this, let's talk about it 6 or 8 or 12 or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. I never, this never surfaced in the past, in my knowledge, and other people may have that. So on the public access thing, I think you guys asked all the right questions. There are many landowners in these land trust easements that have real concerns about it, privacy and other things. This guy is not a young man. The Creek Farm project took almost 20 years, more than that. I actually lived in Creek Farm, my first house in Portsmouth in 1978, and I introduced the owner, Chet Knowles, and his wife to the then, who's long dead, easement steward guy at the Forest Society. And it took over 20 years from that introduction in 1980, say, to the time that we closed the deal. This kind of project takes forever, and the patience and the dealing. The next step is the securing the easement, which is exactly what we did with Creek Farm. We bought the easement first on the property, and eventually the pieces fell into place. And I think that this project, if we're all patient and live long enough, will develop into the kind of property that benefits the community in a more diverse way than it would will in the short term. But the ecosystem services that are provided by this property will be immediately benefiting from the lack of development. So keep the big picture in mind, keep the long timeline in mind, and know that, although you guys don't have the power, that recommendation to the council to use these designated resources, what other project is left in this town to put the conservation dollars that we have set aside to? It's out there. I don't know of any scale. So I think it would be a terrible mistake. And I honestly believe that the council will be extremely enthusiastic about this, and many of them that I've spoken to are very, very supportive of this. So that's my comments. Any questions? Peter?
I just want to clarify, Jamie, and no disrespect, but the reason we didn't speak with them earlier is we didn't know about this until a few weeks ago. So it's our duty to review the contract. Staff is very supportive of this project, and I understand you're supportive and you're asking for new support. I think there's a ton of support with the commission and staff, and that's
Good. Okay.
That's not why we brought the city attorney in. It's because it's our responsibility to review contracts, and this is our first chance. So it didn't come, from our standpoint, it didn't come at the last hour. It's just, this is the chance we got to do that, and we're doing it now.
Right, I get that, and I understand that, but you were totally aware of this has been under negotiations. The city's been aware of the fact that it.
No, we knew that people had talked to them in the past, and certainly would love to get this property under agreement.
Yeah, okay. But you can understand how the timeline is so significant here with that, this kind of project. And if you don't grab the moment, we would have lost the Creek Farm project if we didn't get that easement bought when the door opened for us to do it. And we had to raise the money very, very quickly. I had to raise $400,000 in about 3 weeks from people in this community to buy that easement. And then we got some money out of the Stone Trust. But it was and if it hadn't happened, we could have lost it. Sorry. Thanks.
Thank you. We have a couple of minutes. Is there anybody else from the public that wanted to briefly speak?
Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Berg. I actually live across the street on Lincoln Avenue.
Oh, you just say it into the microphone, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Peter Berg, 54 Lincoln Avenue. I don't really want to spend too much time. I think Jamie covered it really well. I'm actually on the board of the Seacoast Land Trust. I've been involved in land conservation as a volunteer for 30 plus years. I actually worked as an outdoor educator and an outdoor guide for 15 years. I just would encourage you, we're the only two groups that are going to be here to save this property. If it's not us at this table, it's not going to happen. It will be developed. You have the opportunity. Years ago, I was actually on a board that saved the Wentworth by the Sea Hotel. You have the opportunity, as I have now when I bring my grandchildren by there, you have the opportunity to bring your kids down there 10 years from now or whatever and say, we saved this. So I recognize, city, a lot going on. I would just encourage you to try to work together. These guys are smart. They've done a lot of these deals. Let's get it done. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much. Anybody else that? Run, Peter, run.
This is work
Yeah.
too? Yeah. Hi, I'm, can you hear me? Peter Vandermark, and I lived here for about 35 years. I was actually on the commission at some point, and I really just want to support the project. I think I'm right that this is the conservation fund money that we're talking about. So I would just, this is not from general funds. I would own that and use it the way you think is needed. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I'm Robin Najar. I live on 10 Martine Cottage Road, which is over off of Little Harbor Road. I have been in Portsmouth for over 30 years, lived here as a kid on Pease, then moved away and then found my way back. But I want to give you a quick history. This land trust was spawned out of what was an effort of two organizations. One was particularly here in Portsmouth, the Seacoast Land Trust. We started that, myself, Jamie, Peter, some other folks, because of the Belle Isle development that was proposed to put 30-some condos on that island. We didn't exactly get what we wanted. There's still the house there, but the development was stopped. We took the leftover money from that and started a land trust because we realized that in this area, there was no land trust. The Forest Society was mostly working in the north at that time, and there really wasn't a lot of interest. And this started because of Portsmouth, Rye, Greenland, Newcastle, and one other, Newington, I think. So every year, I was on the board, I was the president of the Seacoast Land Trust for many years, but every year, we'll say, what's happening in Portsmouth? Can we do anything in Portsmouth? And the Cavaretta property has been on that list forever. I remember walking it many, many years ago with Joe, stumbling around in the wetlands and in the field and really thinking, this is such a great opportunity. We don't have these kind of opportunities, as you know, in Portsmouth. So he has gone back and forth, back and forth. He built stone walls down on my neighbors. I'd say, hey, Joe, what's happening? What are you thinking? He's had every developer in the town there looking at this. But in his heart, he really wants this to be a conservation property. He doesn't want it to go, but he needs the money. And so years and years and years, and every year that Cavaretta property, I'd say to Dwayne, are you still talking to him to keep it on that list? And now finally, we have an agreement. And if we can't consummate this agreement, it's going to fall to pieces. But we can't do it without the city's support. The Seacoast Land Trust, or the CELT, can raise a lot of money, is well versed in getting grant money and doing all that. But without the support of the city, it looks like a shallow deal. So please, I know you guys are all concerned, but every time I drive by the Great Bog, I'm like, I helped do that. I mean, yes, it's mussy and hard to get in there. It'd be great if we could have some trails in there. The city owns that. Land Trust has an easement on it.
Robin, we have a drop dead. I want to be able to vote.
Right.
So
anyhow, so I'm just saying, please, please, please. This organization was started because of the development that was happening in Portsmouth. So please, let's do it. Now or never.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to, if anybody, we do have a drop dead that we have to get out of here, so I don't know if you have anything to add to what people have said, or...
I'll just say very quickly, I'd like to claim the longevity prize for time in Portsmouth. I'm living in a house that my parents bought in 1950.
Do you mind introducing yourself?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
So between, my family has been taxpayers in the city of Portsmouth, and now I am for nearly 75 years. I know they would support this project. I certainly do. Given the opportunity, I will contribute willingly and enthusiastically personal funds to the project as well. If you haven't, I have had an opportunity to work on the property. It is beautiful. If you haven't yet done so, I would encourage you to do that, and I think you will be convinced of not only the desirability but the need to proceed.
And your name is?
Bruce Goodwin.
And
Thank you.
thank you. So, oh gosh. We really want to vote. Yeah.
Want us to vote?
You want us to vote.
Want us to vote?
They got to vote.
Give me 1 minute. My name is Sam Reed. I live at 34 Madison Street in Portsmouth. I'm past president of Southeast Land Trust. I'm a taxpayer here in Portsmouth. I disagree with the advice that you're giving from the city attorney. I'm a member of the New Hampshire Bar for 40 years. I've been involved in land trusts for 15 years. This organization is the best entity to hold the easement on this property. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening to us today.
Thank you. So, I think, did the commissioners, if I'm going to do the right procedure here, do we want to have a motion then? We can do that,
You're going to
right?
vote, you got to have a motion.
Yeah, so I'm like, it's an unusual meeting. So, does anybody want to make a motion? And I don't know if we want to separate this out too, just for the vote. But, so whoever wants to do this can decide.
We could do 2 votes, I guess,
Yeah, we could do 2 votes.
just to make sure that at least we get one done
Okay, go for it.
in 5 minutes.
Motion?
Go, Lynn.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to, demonstrate our full support for this project to, benefit the LTRIP application and, encourage the city staff to continue working on this project and period. Right? That's what we're doing, kind of like letter of support versus a funding recommendation. Is that what you recommended, Barbara?
Is that, sorry, I wasn't obviously here for this presentation. Is that the second one there, or is that different?
That's the second one.
Okay.
Well, was
Wait,
it a
no.
letter of support for the Milchick project?
Okay, so that's different than those
Yeah,
three.
that's-
Okay.
That's the biggest, most pressing need right now, I think. But they definitely want you to talk about
Let's do both.
funding, too.
Let's do both. Okay.
I'll do a motion for the second one.
You'll do the second one?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got one, and you're seconding that, but you're going to do another motion afterwards. Okay,
But you can talk about what what your motion means.
Yeah, do you
and
wanna
You
expand
should
it a little
expand a little bit on what your motion is.
Maybe
I
we
mean,
can-
other
maybe-
members can weigh in, too.
Well, we got a second, so now we have discussion.
Discussion?
Well, I think that's an easy one. I mean, I think we support, I don't,
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak for everyone, but
No,
I
I
think that's an
agree.
easier one, for sure.
Yeah, I think we're all aligned on that.
Let's get a vote done.
Yeah.
great. All those in favor? All right, this is a letter of support for the LCHIP grant, showing your support. So, next motion?
I'm going to make a motion to recommend that the City Council provides the recommended funds or requested funds to the Southeast Land Trust for the purchase of this, is it easement or land? Easement.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion.
It might be good to say the dollar amount, just to be clear for your record.
The full amount. So $1 million.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that was going to be in the discussion is, that's what
Yeah.
we're not waiting to see what is funded elsewhere before we give our
Million.
1 million. Okay.
That's my recommendation.
Right, that's what the motion is. Okay.
You need a second for that?
I think
I'll
Alex already seconded. So I missed some of this. Did that conversation come up about waiting for other funding to come in
No,
first?
it did not come up. Now that you just brought this up.
That would be my only hesitation. I don't know if that means we're committed to the 1 million or we're committed to whatever is needed if it's under 1 million. I don't know if that's something that can be answered or if it should even go out. it's up to you to entertain.
I don't know, maybe procedurally, I don't know exactly what's going to happen here, but it seems like that kind of discussion could well happen down the road with city council. We're not really authorizing anything, we're just making a recommendation that they use the funds, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to talk about, what is the amount, is that appropriate? I think that could
Be a city
still come
council
up.
thing, yeah.
Yeah,
Right, or if it's conditional on how much they raise or whatever.
right.
I think what we did here, though, is that it'd be really nice to have a dollar figure committed by the city, within the next 2 months, basically, before LCHIP has to make their final decision. And that's I think that's a real timeline.
And having a dollar amount just backs it even more, I guess, I'm assuming for the LCHIP grant, like showing Portsmouth support with a dollar amount.
What are we going to gain by waiting 1 or 2 months to specify an amount? What's
Maybe
the
just
added
spending
value?
less. I don't know, that would be it. That would,
Well, we could go up to
Yeah.
$1 million if
Yeah.
it's needed, and less if less is needed.
yeah.
So you want to amend your,
Yes, I would recommend.
your
Can I amend that recommendation that we support the project up to $1 million and less if less is needed?
second? Okay. Any more discussion?
My only hesitation with that is it feels a tiny bit contradictory, because I feel like the other sort of contingency I sort of want to add to this, and I don't know exactly what the mechanism is. He's just like a very sincere, hopefully you're getting the message that we want to be kind of collaborators on the project, Portsmouth's super excited about this, we understand all of the values, and, we kind of want, and the city does bring a fair amount of capacity in the conservation space, maybe unlike some of the other municipalities that you're here, so just that you work with. And that includes our legal team, so I guess just, we encourage you to collaborate with the staff and to kind of see us as a partner on the project. And we know that there's going to be future phases, right? There's going to be more work that needs to be done there to take ownership, to envision this cool, creative, awesome thing that you want to do, and the public access, and that I guess we just kind of want to be part of that conversation, I think is.
And earlier,
Yeah.
we only heard about it as a conservation commission, 3 weeks ago? Whenever we first got to go and walk it. So if there's any possibility for it ever to be earlier on the timeline, I think that would be appreciated. We say that with a lot of projects that happen in Portsmouth, even with our own city staff, so just to be included earlier.
Well, I don't know, is there a stipulation to add that there be some discussion of kind of memorializing the partnership in some way as the agreement gets put in place for the funding? I don't know. Because, we've talked about ways to hear about use of the land, being first in line for when the easement, when the land changes hands to be holder of the easement, that kind of thing. I don't know how to add that to.
I think you could complete this one and then do another motion to talk about that, if you wanted, or you could add it right in as part of the motion, however you want to do it.
Like a stipulation?
If you want to add some,
Yeah, stipulation.
you support it into that, whatever, up to that amount, but you also want to increase the collaboration with those points you made.
Right.
Something like that, I don't know. It'd be good for the council to hear whatever you want to give them.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you can get it out now, it's great.
Okay.
Just that the Conservation Commission be involved as early as possible in the process for future phases on the.
Well, I think it's more that there's going to be some kind of transaction here that there's some way for us to memorialize what the relationship is and what the intention is when the property changes hands.
Did you want to say something?
If I could help, because I think I can see where this is going, and if I could help just provide a little guidance respectfully. Perhaps the right thing to do is to vote on the one or two motions here that are expressing support, both in written form and financial, and then because I think that's what Southeast Land Trust needs in the short term.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to discuss, some limited, grant agreement or something like that, that memorializes the expectations moving forward when the funding is actually allocated, there's time to do that. We have more time to do that. We could come back, we could meet again in the future. Does that make sense?
right on target.
We typically have a letter of agreement or something like that between the municipality and the land trust that says, here's what your responsibilities are, our responsibilities are.
And that can be like amended, like after discussions too?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
that would be sometime this fall.
Okay.
As long as it's done before the closing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine with me then.
Yeah, we've got time to do that.
Okay.
Great.
All right, so as it stands with the original, the second, okay, and everybody want to vote? Okay, all those in favor? Thank you.
Good job, Barbara.
What time is it?
No, because I missed
One minute late, 1 minute late.